welcome, and thank you very much for talking to us this afternoon. My name is Jim Connolly from the Center for Middletown Studies at Ball State, and I'm speaking with Father David Hellmann of St. Lawrence Catholic Church in Muncie. It's April 4th, 2017. So, again, thanks very much. We appreciate your time and your patience as we got set up here.
A pleasure. Thank you.
So, as you know, the project we're engaged in is looking at the civic roles of churches in Muncie, particularly in the context of some of the economic and social changes that have taken place over the last 30 or 40 years. So I want to engage in a conversation about that, but before we begin that, I'd like to hear a little bit about you. And so if you could just give us a little sense of your faith journey, your background, how long you've been a priest in general, and how long you've been appointed to St. Lawrence.
My history with St. Lawrence Parish is a little different than most priests because I actually grew up here. I went to grade school, St. Lawrence Grade School. Went through school through 8th grade before going off into the seminary. And in those days, the seminary training usually included 4 years of high school, 4 of college, then 4 of theology. So I went to Lake Wawasee for high school, St. Meinrad for college, then down to New Orleans for theology. Then when I came back to serve in the Diocese of Lafayette, the bishop asked, would you have any objection to going back to your home parish? And I said, well, I don't see any reason to object. And so it's actually ordained here at St. Lawrence, and my first assignment was here. That was just a fairly short assignment of 2 years, and then was transferred to West Lafayette. And then I came back to Muncie. I was at St. Francis Parish from 84 to 88 on the Ball State campus, but I was just reassigned here to Muncie, to St. Lawrence, July of 2015. I had told the bishop I had one assignment left before retirement, so if St. Lawrence ever opened up, this is the one parish I would like to be at. And so when it opened up, he let me know, and I said, yes, I'd still very much like to come.
Why did you want to come back?
There were several reasons. I'm trying to avoid putting someone in bad light, but a parishioner, someone actually who was a member of the parish when I was growing up, living 3 blocks from me, the pastor refused to have a Catholic Mass for this man. And I know saying, I never want anyone I know to be denied a Catholic funeral if that's what they wanted. So that really, I just was very upset with that, and very much wanted to make sure that I could be a pastoral presence to the community that I knew. And also I knew a lot of Catholics had left the Catholic Church, still in the community, and I knew some of them and know some, so I thought I'd also like to use the opportunity of reaching out to them and see if I can heal some of that divide or some of that which separated them, and see if I could re-engage them in the Catholic community. And then I plan to retire here in the community, and then I would be available to help out in Muncie and the surrounding area if other priests needed a day off for a vacation period of time, and whereas in our diocese over in Lafayette, there are quite a few retired priests, but not very many over on this side. So those were the factors that led me to ask to come back.
Well, I do want to get into your sense of how things have changed given your history with this community and with St. Lawrence. But before we do that, could you spend a minute or so describing your role, your main responsibilities, your sort of day-to-day activities?
I have the full responsibility for the spiritual well-being of this parish community of 400 families. We have a fairly large number of people that are elderly, So I spend, like next week, I'll have a Mass at Westminster, one at Elmcroft, and one at Morrison Woods to provide for the Catholic communities,
Yeah, these
people who are
retirement
there
homes, yeah.
at the homes. And then I usually do communion calls on Friday to those who are shut in. I visit the hospital once or twice a week, depending on how much time that I have. I have a Mass for the school children on Wednesday morning, and I go out to the school Friday morning to do religion class with the children. I have staff meetings on Monday afternoon. Those who are preparing to enter into the Catholic Church we meet with on Monday evening. Of course, we have Finance Council and Parish Council, Liturgy Committee this Wednesday evening. I'm also serving as chaplain to the Knights of Columbus in Muncie. And those are Tuesday evening. So
It's a full schedule.
I've not gotten bored yet.
Yeah, it sounds like too that there's a real mix of managerial and spiritual concerns in your day-to-day life.
It was really difficult. The first year was really challenging, just to have a clarity on where we were financially as a parish. There were really some issues, and finally that has been clarified, and I actually have a part-time business manager to handle a lot of the business into the parish. But I still have to oversee the direction, the thrust, the ministry that goes on in the parish and in the community.
So, speaking of the direction, do you see the church as thriving or struggling? In what direction do you see things going?
I don't see it as thriving at this point, but I see it as becoming more energized, and I believe there's, now if I can channel that energy in a good way, the parish will be very much alive. I would like to say, when I was growing up in the 50s, the school was a major part of the parish. There were probably 400 to 500 students in the school. It went from kindergarten up through 9th grade. There were like 63 students in my second grade class. By the time we were in 5th grade, there were 50 of us, but it was still quite a substantial school. And that most of the fundraising was done for the school, because at that time families paid a annual tuition of $25 a year, not per student, per family. So most of the resources of this parish, and the school was started in 1882, and the Sisters of St. Agnes were the ones out of Fond du Lac, were the ones that ran the school, but it was a major part of the parish. And I, of course, was in the school, so most of our social life, I would say, was a part of that as well. When I came back, when I was first ordained, that was in 1973, the school was then from kindergarten through 6th grade. It was quite a bit smaller. The 6th grade, I believe, may have had 20 students in it at the time. So the population had diminished
This was in the
substantially.
early 70s.
73.
Right.
73. I had the same pastor that I had when I was in grade school. That was my pastor as a priest. There was another associate working here at the time. So there were three of it. There were three priests. I left in 75, and there were the two priests here and another priest were then assigned to the parish. And 3 years later, that pastor retired. So the two priests who were left ran it as co-pastors until '81. and they were transferred. And then Father Heitz came in. He had an associate at first, but at the end he was by himself. So from about 94, I would say, 93, 94, there's been one priest stationed here, or assigned here.
And is that a reflection of declining numbers?
Declining size of the parish, as well as a declining number of priests available. There are some priests now who have two parishes, and I was doing that before I came here. I had Lake Village and DeMott, and I put on 40,000 miles a year the 2 years I was there. And just, I said I just want to be someplace where I'm only looking after one parish.
I see.
So,
do you have a sense of the numbers
that are here?
Membership now versus earlier periods?
We're very close to 400 families currently. That may be 800 to 900 people. On the weekend, we probably get about, our attendance is a little over 500 people. I've seen a number of young families with young children recently, and I did not see many of those when I first came, but I see that number starting to become more visible. So I do think there's new life coming into the parish. I'm delighted to see that, and hope we're able to maintain that and build their greater sense of belonging to the parish and being a part of it.
Do you have a sense of why you're seeing some younger families coming in? I've had a couple of young people invite their parents to come because they've enjoyed being here. Mm-hmm. And so I think a number of people have been pretty good recruiters. So I'm glad to have their recruiting effort to be a part of the parish. So good. A couple things to follow up. One was, you say currently there's about 400 families. Do you have a sense of what that number was, say, when you were here in the 70s or at an earlier time?
When I was in the 70s, there were at least on the books, over 800 families.
Okay.
Like I said, there were still 3 priests at that time. There are 3 priests here, 3 at St. Francis and 3 at St. Mary's. So there were 9 priests in Muncie then. Currently we have 3. Mm-hmm. So that's how the Catholic number of available clergy has diminished.
You also mentioned that you have a sense of the church becoming more energized in recent years. Could you talk a bit about what you mean by that?
I would say since I've come, we've had about over 50 families that have registered in the parish. And I know a number of them want to be involved. And we're right now exploring doing a strategic plan, but also a plan for ministry as to where do people believe we really need to go, what do we need to be involved with to serve in this community of Muncie, and where do we really make our greatest effort. My thought is they're looking for that.
With an eye towards that agenda, do you see particular challenges or obstacles in your way to getting where you want to go?
I want them to have ownership with whatever we do. One obstacle in this parish, which I've told the people I find very remarkable, This parish started back in 1869, and it's the only parish I know that I've been a part of that does not have a community center. There's not a place where a large part of the community can gather. And so I think it's critical that we have a large center into the future so we can at least gather with one another. That's, I think, an essential thing. When all these buildings that we have were built, nobody believed in building on the ground floor. Every building we have, you either go up to steps or down to a basement. There is nothing that's actually on the ground floor. And even like the office where you came over, there's steps going up to it. So our elderly people do not have much opportunity of actually coming to the office. We don't have a ramp, we don't have an elevator or a lift. It is strictly the stairs going into it. So we are not very handicap accessible. And if we really want to involve the whole community, we need to make a facility responsive to that. So that's,
So building that kind of accessible community
that is
in a physical sense.
both ways. I think we need that to build community, but to also give a sense to everyone that you're included,
Right.
that you have a voice, that you can be a part of it. And so I've been working on drawing up some preliminary plans that the parish will receive. And then also I have a number of different ministries that I want to present to them and ask them to give me feedback of what they believe and would like to see, and then we will work toward the mission for the parish. What is our mission? Like I said, in the past, the school was the primary mission, and it absorbed all the resources of the parish. So there was not much directed beyond that.
So moving forward, what do you envision the mission being, or the role of the church in the wider community?
I see us trying to work to be more collaborative. This year, instead of doing our parish festival, which has been done even before I was born, it's been going on for years, but we've done it just as a parish. This last year, we actually did it in conjunction with the Washington Street Festival. So trying again to integrate into the community, be a part of it. I would also see, once I believe that I've drawn our parish together, to then to be in contact with a lot of the other churches in the neighborhood, to find out where can we be cooperative with each other, where can we work together for the needs of the community, especially the neighborhood community. So that's where I see us trying to go.
It sounds like you feel that you have some internal work to do before you're in a position to really
I
engage
believe I
with-
do. And also we, as a lot of places have seen an increase in the Hispanic population, and we've had a number of Hispanic families, and we just have begun Hispanic ministry. It's just starting.
So this is a recent development, the increased presence of Hispanics?
Yeah, it is pretty recent.
Do you have any sense of the numbers?
Right now, it's very difficult to say because I went to a conference with the diocese in regard to Hispanic ministry, and they were clear throughout the diocese right now, a lot of the Hispanics are being very low-key. They go to work or go to school, but other than that, they try to stay invisible. Basically, they feel a lot of tension, a lot of fear. There's a lot of uncertainty as to what the future is going to be, or what they might be facing. I don't personally know. I've never asked who are legal or illegal. Just to me, they're members of the parish, the families of the parish, and so they're part of my pastoral care.
Has there been any discussion of doing any kind of Spanish language services or things like that?
Actually, we you can't see it now, but we brought in a statue of Our Lady of Guadalupe. That's the primary figure in the Hispanic
Yes.
Catholic culture. It had begun a Mass once a month, the second Sunday of the month, in Spanish. And I read the Spanish for what it's worth. And then there is a deacon who is Hispanic himself, Deacon Castillo. He does the gospel and the homily in Spanish. And then the diocesan director of Spanish ministry came over, and she is working with several leadership couples to form them in training for, strengthening marriages. So that's what she's working on. Deacon Castillo is also working on Cursillo retreats, which are in Spanish, and to develop a Hispanic retreat team. So that will have more outreach. And then the diocese is involved with what is going on at the national level to have what they call an encuentro, a real gathering of Hispanics throughout the country, and identify what their needs are in ministry, with them. So that's what we're working on, and if it isn't this July, I will have a priest here who's in retirement, but he'll be in residence. He's retiring, he'll be in residence, but he's a very, very fluent in Spanish, and will be able to really know what is happening.
I see, yeah.
Since I don't know the language, I can't translate what they're saying, or somebody else has to tell me what they're saying, and I don't know what gets filtered. I don't know.
Well, maybe next fall we'll have to come back and talk to you about that and see.
Well, that might be interesting.
Yeah.
He definitely would be able to, I know that. So,
We'll keep that in mind.
okay.
So another thing that we wanted to consider, and I think that the increased presence of Hispanics maybe is one reflection of that, is that there's a changing economic and social character to Muncie. The city has gone from being a community based largely on industrial employment, factory work, and so forth, to a more diversified, but also in many ways more of a struggling economy. And so I'm curious how those changes have affected the way you see St. Lawrence operating in the community.
Even before I came, they had begun a ministry and outreach to the impoverished. There's the soup kitchen that's the old school building on the campus here is now primarily used for social outreach ministry. It was jointly established, through the three parishes, that they went together and set up the use of that building with various ministries, and they've evolved over time. And one is a soup kitchen. The soup kitchen provides a hot meal with a sack lunch Monday through Friday. So our hope there is that no one in Muncie should go hungry. Even if they don't have a place to live, even if they're homeless, they still have 2 meals that are provided Monday to Friday. So I'm very glad that's probably about 125 and maybe up to 175 people that receive the free meals. We do our food pantry here. There's a number of other places food pantry. And usually 20 to 30 sacks of groceries are given Tuesday and Thursday. We just ask them for an ID, but we don't really do anything with it. If they come, we feel they're hungry, and we'll the first come, first serve, and when we're out, we're out. So 20 to 30 twice a week. The St. Vincent de Paul store is a thrift store, and people donate items to it, and then money is raised through that, And that money primarily goes to the St. Vincent de Paul Society, which helps people sometimes with medicine, prescriptions, sometimes with utilities. Since most of the, I don't want to say welfare, but like somebody through HUD gets housing. Well, housing will pay for the rent, but they won't pay for the deposit. Well, when somebody's homeless, they usually don't have the $700 to meet the deposit. So actually we'd received a grant, or not a grant, a gift from a former parishioner of $25,000, and that is used to help primarily with, again, utilities and the deposits for housing. So that is what we're doing currently. We hope to upgrade our food pantry with the second harvest and to make it so that we're able to give out healthy vegetables and fruits as well as meats if people have a place to cook those. And we're hoping to upgrade with them to...
In conjunction with the second harvest.
Right, in conjunction with them.
Okay.
So we just need someone to do all the paperwork that's required for that. So we tend to do that. Then also Meridian Healthcare or Meridian Health, whatever, they have a drop-in center in the basement of the school building. Yeah. And so they can do a number of things. They have like bus tokens, help people get haircuts. They can have like a referral if somebody needs to get messages. They can have messages left on the phone there that they can, because if somebody doesn't have a way of being reached, then there's not much access they have to work or employment or so.
So it sounds like you're involved in a range of activities that minister to the poor. So one of the questions I have as you go forward is, you're also exploring possibilities for collaborating with other parts of the community. Do you see these two things working in tandem, or do you see them as parallel tracks?
Part of my belief is that everyone's gifted in some way, and there's a lot of wasted talent with the people that aren't, able to be employed or find employment. I'm so convinced that we need to find ways that can engage them, that they can have the satisfaction of doing something that they find worthwhile, but also helping restore their dignity. I think it's awfully humbling to have to ask for help. And if some way that we can engage it, yes, it's not just doing it as a handout, but rather as a participation. That's
shared endeavor.
That's shared in some way, are part of it.
And so you talked about working with the Washington Street Festival for your community celebration. You talked about working with other churches as well.
Right.
Do you think that doing those things will help achieve that sense of participation?
I believe that if we can come together and explore various ideas of implementing that, I really think we can.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And so one of the things that I've been wondering a little bit is, as you think about the role of individual churches and collaboration, you talked about building up your own community internally and then also reaching out to other groups and parts of the community. Do you see those two things in tension, or do you see those as complementary?
I see it as complementary. I think Jesus' phrase is, the one who's not against us is with us. And there's a man who was a business out in Indianapolis in environmental, and he said, I don't see the other companies that are in the environmental field as competitors. I see them as co-workers in the field to improve the environment in which we live. And That's the attitude I'm coming from in regard to working together. If we can together work better for the community of Muncie, then we all are enriched by it. And it's not, we aren't called simply to do it for ourselves, we're called to do it when Jesus builds the kingdom. And
Do you think there are particular obstacles to that kind of collaborative work across denominational lines? And
there are always, to me it comes down to motivation. If somebody is doing it in response to that commission to feed the sick, feed the hungry and clothe the naked and assist the sick and welcome the stranger, if we're doing it, for that reason, it's fine. But if we're doing it because I want to increase my number, then we'd get caught in competition of like, they would definitely feel a pull or attention that this is like our self-interest, not their interest. So to me, the basic factor comes down to whose interest am I doing this for? And I hope that it's for the interest of the person being served, not.
And in the context of the changing economic and social situation in Muncie, do you find that tendency to collaborate or the willingness to collaborate has increased or decreased or changed in some way?
I think my perspective is that if we don't come together, if we don't work together, Muncie will suffer even more. But the chance that we have for Muncie really to do well or be well is the better that we work together for the well-being of this community. That to me is a perspective.
And do you think, are class differences an obstacle? You've talked about the fact that this is a church in a blue-collar part of town and a blue-collar parish.
What I see is, this is going a little bit off, but the public school system, in my mind, has served our country very well in helping bring people together across class divisions. And I feel that we're in great danger to lose something like that and get segmented, that this group here has no knowledge of this group here. And if there's no reality there, then we just get into stereotypes. This is the way they are, this is the way they are. And we have those knowledge or whatever that's based on nothing other than our own bias or prejudices or whatever. I just am more fearful of the breakdown of actually the public school system. Like that scares me as a greater danger than a lot of other things. Because I was down in Fishers. Hamilton Southeast was the high school there.
Yeah.
And it's quite a well-to-do area and that. This family was telling me they went out to Colorado and visited friends of their mom and dad. And the children of that family said, "We have never met anyone who's gone to a public high school." I thought, wow. Sad. And I would like to see more integration than less integration, because it's in the knowing of each other and the meeting each other that we really then understand each other. Otherwise, there is no real connection, in no way to really. A man that I know had moved to Evansville. He's since died of cancer, but he told me he was on a commission to work in regard to poverty. And he said they never talked about inviting those who are poor to actually come in and say what their issues were. And so he challenged them on that. And it's just like, oh, a new idea. It's like, well, if you're going to be talking about why people are doing what they're doing, let's ask them instead of assume we know they're doing what they're doing, why they're doing it. And it's like, I think that was a brilliant idea.
Yeah.
So-
And your remarks feed into another question that I wanted to ask you, which is how you see a role for a church and for your church to promote a sense of citizenship, or do you see a role for the church in doing that?
My perspective of the Catholic understanding is that every person is a child of God. All of us were made by the same Creator. All of us come from the same source. None of us are above anyone else. None of us are below anyone else. There is a common equality that we have that comes from being made in the image of God. And if we as a Catholic community can promote and spread and live that reality, then I think that will be good citizenship. I'm a little against a narrow, I thought of citizenship in terms of, like Hispanics, whether legal or not legal, in my mind, still a child of God. They have gifts. They are hard workers. They are very dedicated. They have a very strong family. They have strong bonds with each other. And it's something we've lost in our society. Families have broken down a lot. Families have disintegrated. They can actually, I think, bring back an awareness of why the strength of a family is so important, and maybe even help guide us in how to build strong families. So we have something to gain.
Something to learn from them.
Yes, it's the various cultural groups that have come into this country have all brought gifts. They were not a drain on the country. They brought gifts. And the more we recognize that and brought that in, the richer this country has been. When they say America's great, its greatness comes from its diversity, not from its...
It sounds as though that process is happening now in Muncie, a little bit later perhaps than in other parts of the country, but that it's something that's occurring now, at least in St. Lawrence.
Well, so if that's citizenship, that's... in my view, we're one family, the family of God. That's whose family we are before any other label I put on anybody.
Do you get into it all in whether it's in a homily or in conversations with your parishioners on questions of civic engagement or civic responsibility? Is that a topic that comes up, or is that something that's less emphasized?
I don't know if I phrased it in that way, but I'm thinking let's say I try to say it maybe in a indirect way. I'm thinking when I was in Crawfordsville, I haven't done that here yet, but in the story of Jesus and Mary and Joseph fleeing down into Egypt, and I always thought of that stained glass window as the flight to Egypt. But I said, do you realize that if they were Hispanic, their names would be Jose, Maria, and Jesus? And if you think about it, do you think they were legal when they went down to Egypt? Did they have their documents to show their citizenship? What kind of reception do you think they felt? Do you think they were accepted, embraced because they were fleeing? Or do you think people were hostile toward them because they were foreigners and they really weren't like us? What do you think? So,
Well, you'll have to let us know what the response is when you give that homily.
So anyway, and then I was, at the time, they were actually talking about, having penalty if people would serve those who were illegal. And I said, if that becomes a crime, then I have to commit a crime,
Right.
because I have a higher command that says feed the hungry. And that's the one I have to answer to. So if that becomes a crime, well then I will have to do it. I will have to serve jail time or whatever it is, because I have a higher command or law to follow than that law.
I see.
Anyway, that's how I have articulated it.
Do you have any sense of the response you're getting to that?
Like I said, I'm trying to go slow.
Right.
I had to spend the first year, I think, reconnecting, and I think I'm pretty well connected now with this parish community. So
Right.
that's.
Okay, so given your long history with St. Lawrence and your long history with this community in general, is there anything else you want to tell us, or anything else you think we should know?
All I'm thinking of is, I think, over the years, Muncie also has a way of endearing itself to you. And I'm delighted to be in this community. I'm glad to be here. And there's really, of all the places I've been, this is really, it's home for me, and just I want to do whatever I can to serve the community here in Muncie. That's why I'm here.
Well, terrific.
Other than that, I don't know what to say.
Well, that's fine.
But,
I want to thank you again for taking the time to talk to us,
well,
and we appreciate all the help you're giving us. Thanks.
well, thank you.